So, with all the thunderous hype around large language models, you'd think the path forward for AI is totally settled, right? Well, one of the founding fathers of modern AI is sounding a completely different alarm. He actually thinks this entire LLM boom might be a dead end. So let's explore this critical and kind of overlooked fork in the road for the future of AI.
The person we're talking about is Richard Sutton. And he's not just some random critic. We're talking about a Turing Award winner. That's basically the Nobel Prize of computer science. He's widely known as the father of reinforcement learning, which is an absolute cornerstone of modern AI. His credibility is just immense, which is what makes his skepticism so incredibly powerful.
And here it is, his core argument in one sentence. Sutton draws this really sharp line in the sand. He says true intelligence isn't about just mimicking human text. It's about actively understanding and interacting with the world. This one idea, understanding versus mimicking, is really the fundamental conflict that could define the entire next decade of AI.
Yeah, so this is not a minor disagreement. Sutton is pretty much questioning the entire foundation that the current AI boom is built on, which, let's be honest, is overwhelmingly the LLM paradigm. He sees it all as a fundamental misunderstanding of what intelligence actually is.
And you can see the two philosophies laid bare right here. On one side, you have the LLM paradigm. Its goal is to mimic people. It learns from a giant fixed data set of text, basically stuff people have already said, and its main job is to predict the next word. On the other side, you've got Sutton's reinforcement learning. Its goal is to understand the world. It learns from direct experience, from cause and effect, to achieve real goals. They are playing two completely different games.
That's a fair question, right? I mean, to generate such coherent stories and write code that actually works, an LLM must have some kind of internal model of how the world works. This world model is just its representation of cause and effect. In fact, a lot of experts believe that today's LLMs have the best world models we've ever created. But here's Sutton's subtle and honestly game-changing rebuttal. He argues that LLMs don't actually have a world model. They just mimic things that do have world models, us, people. It's kind of like a parrot that can perfectly repeat a physicist's lecture on gravity without having any clue what gravity actually is. And this gets us to the absolute crucial difference. An LLM gets really good at predicting text, not reality. It predicts what a human would say in a certain situation. Our true world model, though, predicts what will actually happen next. When an LLM says something, it doesn't get to experience the consequences of those words and learn from them. There's no feedback loop with reality, or what Sutton calls ground truth.
So this total lack of real-world consequences leads us to the next big disagreement. What does it even mean for an AI to have a goal? And this question gets right to the very definition of intelligence itself.
For Sutton, a goal isn't just some internal math problem. It has to be a real, substantive objective that actually makes a change in the external world. You know, driving a car, winning a game of chess, a robot finding its charging station. These are real goals. And so for him, intelligence is just the ability to achieve those goals. Simple as that.
I'll compare that to the LLM. What's its goal? Just to predict the next word in a sentence accurately. But as Sutton points out, that doesn't influence anything. The words just keep coming, and guessing the next one correctly doesn't change the world at all. It's a totally passive prediction, not an active world-shaping mission.
Okay, this all leads us to one of Sutton's most famous ideas, something he calls the bitter lesson. And there is a really incredible irony in how it's being used to defend LLMs today.
So back in 2019, Sutton wrote that the bitter lesson of AI research over decades is that trying to handcraft human knowledge into systems is always a losing game. He said the real winners are always the simple, general methods that you can just scale up with massive amounts of computation, like pure search and learning.
And here's the twist. A lot of people see LLMs as the ultimate victory of the bitter lesson. You're just scaling up learning with huge computation. But Sutton sees the complete opposite. Because LLMs are trained on the internet, which is just the largest collection of human knowledge ever, he believes they are just another version of the old human knowledge approach. And he thinks they're destined to be beaten by systems that learn directly from raw experience instead.
So, if LLMs aren't the path forward, then what is? Well, let's take a look at Sutton's alternative vision for getting to AGI, which he calls the experiential paradigm.
The core idea here is beautifully simple, and that's what makes it so powerful. An agent observes the world, it takes an action, and then it gets feedback, a reward or a punishment. And then it updates its understanding based on that outcome. You just repeat that loop,
billions and billions of times, and that is how an agent truly learns about the world from the ground up, just through direct experience.
Now, this is probably the most common counter-argument you'll hear. We all look at kids, and we see them imitating their parents, learning language and skills by just copying, so doesn't that prove that the LLM's imitation-based approach is on the right track?
Well, Sutton argues that we're just looking at the wrong stage of development. He says to look at an infant in its first 6 months. They aren't really imitating anything at all. They're exploring, waving their hands, moving their eyes, making sounds. It is pure trial and error, pure experiential learning. And he believes that is the true fundamental foundation of intelligence, not imitation.
And this leads to his fantastic and super memorable line, "Squirrels don't go to school." Think about it. They don't get handed a textbook on how to be a squirrel. They learn everything they need to know, how to find nuts, climb trees, avoid predators, just by doing it, by having this direct, continuous interaction with their environment. That, for Sutton, is the real model for true learning.
All right, finally, this brings us to the really grand philosophical implications of Sutton's worldview. Because if he's right about all this, what does it mean for the future of humanity and our relationship with AI? Sutton thinks about this moment in literally cosmic terms. He frames the history of the universe in 4 great stages. First, there was dust, which formed stars, then planets, which made life possible. We're in stage 3, life. Our intelligence is based on replication. We can make more humans, but we don't fully understand how our own intelligence works. He believes we are right on the cusp of stage 4, the era of designed intelligence, where we can understand, build, and improve it directly.
And instead of focusing on fear, Sutton offers this amazing perspective of awe and pride. He suggests we should view this transition not as our end, but as our single greatest achievement. We have the choice to see these new intelligences as our offspring, our successors, and to celebrate what they accomplish as our own legacy.
And so, that's what we're left with, this really profound question. It's not about if, but really when our creations become more intelligent than we are. And the real choice we have, according to Sutton, is just one of perspective. Do we see them as our replacements to be feared, or do we see them as our successors, the next incredible step in the evolution of intelligence in the universe, a step that we ourselves brought into being?